say about life? You gotta get together. Tell yourself stories that violate every law of the universe. Just to get through the goddamn day. Certain linguistic anthropologists think that religion is a language virus that rewrites pathways in the brain, dulls critical thinking.
Change. We have to change our mind about ourselves.
In what way?
A knowledge of self.
This world is a failure. You are a stranger to yourself. And the face you wear is actual.
Our own mind has to be changed. We have to change our mind about ourselves.
In what way?
A knowledge of self.
And be queens and kings like the centuries past.
Knowledge, wisdom, understanding is the key to wealth.
Search for the knowledge, use science and math.
Knowledge, wisdom, understanding is the key to wealth.
And be queens and kings like the centuries past.
Knowledge, wisdom, understanding is the key to wealth.
Our own mind has to be changed. We have to change our mind about ourselves.
In what way?
A knowledge of self. Our own mind has to be changed. We have to change our mind about ourselves.
In what way?
A knowledge of self.
This world is a failure.
You are a stranger to yourself.
And the face you wear is actual.
Video show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace to rule Allah.
Peace, Jakil Nakallah.
We would like to welcome you to another broadcast of the Knowledge Yourself radio show. Our broadcast today, March the 2nd, which we call Master Allah Rule on the Wisdom Day. Each show is sponsored by Global Position Solutions at globalpeacesolutions.net and also Sage Studios, located at 1321 North La Brea Avenue, located in Inglewood, California, 90302. Today's objective of our show is to build unity by realizing how you connect to other people and they connect to you. So let's go into the quote, and this is a really interesting quote because today's show is really going to talk about unity and the need for unity and what has led to the disunity that many of us see in our daily lives or on a political scale, global scale. So, the quote begins, "Today, as the world becomes smaller and smaller, the concept of us and them is almost outdated. If our interests existed independently of those of others, then it would be possible to have a complete winner and a complete loser. But since in reality we all depend on one another, our interests and those of others are very interconnected." Tenzin Gyatso, 14th Dalai Lama. How does everybody see that?
Man, for me, it's just dealing with showing that, we all live on this planet together. And, it even extends past just the planet, the universe, right? So everything that goes on in the universe or everything that happens, say, to me, not only affects me, but it affects the collective. So instead of looking at it from the perspective of, oh man, I feel bad for you, it should be like, it should be more on the extent of like, well, him being down is going to affect the collective, so how can we help pick him up so that the collective can function as it should? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of like seeing a community on the small scale and then having that expand to the next community over and adding on. And so as long as you're finding people who are like-minded and all striving to do the same thing. You realize that everyone wants food, clothing, and shelter. Everyone wants the better for not only themselves, but for other people around them. Because like God was saying, if someone is not feeling well, right, or not doing good, that doctor, you might need that doctor. If he's not well off, right, then he's not going to be able to save that other person's life. Or that could be your cousin's life, he's trying to save, right? So you helping someone else out also in turn helps the other person. So you realize the interconnectedness of people. You definitely want to take care of each other a lot.
Right. Well said. I think for the most part, when I went into my my CERT training, one of the things that the firefighters stressed to us, and of course they didn't really feel, that this was a very pleasant thing to tell us, but they always told us that when they go into any situation, a disastrous situation, they have to assess who has the greater need, and who quite possibly may not survive the particular disaster. So they imparted to us that when we go into a situation, hopefully that'll never happen, but when we go into a situation where there are a bunch of people injured, unfortunately the people who are closest to returning to the essence would be the ones that you would serve and aid last.
The triage, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, I really have mixed feelings about that, simply because we're accustomed, it is our nature, especially those of us who are righteous and like-minded people within the realm of righteousness. We want to save everybody. And I think that's what this show is really about. It's the idea of how do we better understand the we as opposed to the I. So you notice that the Knowledge of Self radio show, it involves 3 people on camera, but there are also people that support this show and put in their time and energy and effort behind the scenes. Hopefully we'll see them again. But for the most part, that's generally how it is. And then also the Knowledge of Self radio show, outside of the 5 people involved, includes you, the viewers, the people who make comments, whether they be positive, negative, or indifferent. You still are contributing to this whole concept of we trying to understand one another, especially on this day. We're trying to better understand what wisdom is and how that works within the scheme of the universe.
No doubt. I was going to even say, when you look at Dave's agreement 1 to 10, right? I remember one time Bourne said, colored is just talking about which team you're on, right? And so you realize the team you're really playing on, the we is a lot more obvious, right? And you think when you're on the team, it's not really about the I, right? As much as it is about the we collectively.
And that's deep, and I want to say peace to our brother Born Allah, who brought this knowledge to Love Allah among a lot of other brothers in the Love Allah cipher. So with that being said, why don't we go ahead and get into today's current events? So I'd like to turn it over to my brother, Shaquille Knowledge Allah. Peace.
AKA Mr. Current Event.
Or I got one that's local. It comes from usnews.com, and it's something that I always thought too, except only I think I had a couple of things going against me if I was going to try and state those things to a police officer. So what happened basically is a man got a ticket in Fresno, California last year, 2012, for $165 for what the police cited him for was violating the law of being on your phone while driving. His kind of argument, which I agree with, and apparently the courts agree with, is that I wasn't texting while driving. I was using my map app looking for an alternative route. And so apparently, based on the language of the law, he was able to win that argument because the law says that, you cannot be on your phone texting while driving, right? But it mentions nothing about getting directions and things of that nature. So they actually overturned the case, and he didn't have to pay that fee.
Loopholes, man. I knew it was coming. There's so many loopholes with that law, man. I mean, you could actually be turning your phone off, you know, and be accused of texting.
Right.
And when they first brought this out, it was if they visibly see you holding your phone up to your ear, then you could be stopped and given a traffic ticket.
Right.
So it was really interesting to see these developments.
Now, granted, I don't agree that people should necessarily be doing anything on their cell phone. Mr. Rule covered in the show before previously talking about the waves and the screen and whatnot, how it puts your mind in a different state. You definitely need to be alert while driving, and that cell phone is aiding in your alertness capability, right? Which is actually what there's a video that goes along with it. I'll post the link up, but that's one of the things that the sheriff says. He goes, "Don't think just because this law got overturned that you won't get stopped and cited." He goes, "There's a law which you can actually look up." Again, most anything you need to know is on the internet, on Google. So if you're not looking for it, that's your fault.
Wow.
But so you can go Google real quick. It's the law speed, right? And look it up in your state. Basically, it's the same for everyone. But within that law, it talks about anything that you do that could be considered dangerous while driving a vehicle is something that you can get cited for. So basically, that's what they're going to be writing you up for. To try to argue that you were getting directions on your phone or turning your phone off, or I won't go any farther with that. But that's what they're going to try and get you for. So keep your heads up,
keep your eyes open. So I would like to pass it over to God Your Rules. With another current event, warm and cold current.
Yeah, this one comes from realpharmacy.com. And the headline is University Mumps Outbreak Affecting Only Vaccinated Students. Schools bans unvaccinated students anyway.
Wait. So you said it was only affecting the people who were vaccinated?
With the mumps, right.
Wow. Huh.
Right. So it's 13 confirmed cases of mumps emerged at Fordham's 2 campuses. Only 2 students, the only students who actually showed signs of the sickness were students that were actually vaccinated.
That's interesting.
No students or no cases as of yet have they found that any students who weren't vaccinated came up with the mumps. But what the university actually proceeded to do was ban the children who weren't vaccinated from going to class.
Because that makes the most sense.
Right. The ones who were vaccinated and came up with the mumps were allowed to go back to class once the contagious part of the mumps passed. You know what I mean? So this brought me to an interesting thought. I think in the future, which we're there now, but I think discrimination isn't necessarily going to be seen so much on skin color as much as it might have been in the past, but it's going to be things like, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, or different things of that nature. You know what I mean? It's like, and you can see this is going to be a major, major issue going forward as far as vaccinations, children that are things of that nature. I think pretty soon we're going to see a lot in regards to that. You know what I mean?
Wow. Right, and I think that's something people need to stand up and say something, right? What's the rationale behind people who didn't get sick? Which, if anything, those people that would have been, they either are immune to, either way they develop antibodies, right? So they're not going to be affected by it. So we want to have those people around, if anything, spreading anything, versus having people who have a weak immune system, probably because they took the vaccine shot, which weakens your immune system, right? Not only that, but it gives you, the virus itself. Come back to school so that they can spread it, because who said that the virus died? Or the amount of period in which it could spread and affect someone else.
Right.
What if there's a dormant time? Like you're talking about something that you engineered, right? You're pretty much testing it, so you don't know how long it's going to last per se.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, one quote coming from ABC News is that all of the students who were tentatively diagnosed with mumps had been vaccinated. Vaccinations do not offer 100% protection.
Or any protection for that matter.
Right, as you can see.
ABC News.
Yeah, I mean, so.
But yeah,
Wow.
go get your vaccine because you can save money in the grocery.
Thank you for that, brother.
Indeed.
Well, I know some of you heard an incident about a pastor in Kentucky who died as a result of a snake bite. And he was classified as a third generation serpent handler. A man by the name of Jamie Coots, pastor at the Full Gospel Tabernacle in Jesus' Name in Kentucky, was bitten by a snake during service. And the story is that this was a common and regular occurrence during church services where members of the congregation, including the pastor, would handle snakes.
Samuel Jackson wasn't a part of that.
No, not that one. So, no, maybe he perked up. Like what? So, the story is that he went home after being bitten by a rattlesnake and refused to get any type of medical attention. And later that led to him dying at his home. And one of the excerpts from the interview with his son said that, he basically passed out in the bathroom. Wow. And his son said his last words was, "Sweet Jesus." The whole irony of all of this is that, in the same book that people advocate this type of behavior, it also states that you're not supposed to test the Lord thy God. I can't remember the exact quote. But if you look into some of the rationale, I just wanted to read what it was. Find it right here. He was referring to. It was written in Exodus. I'm sorry. Looking at the wrong one.
That's crazy though. So, how do you, I would think that person would have at least took the time to develop some kind of immunity, but maybe injecting himself in small doses of venom, and throughout the time, you just develop some kind of immunity to it, so that if an accident did happen, well, it's called insurance, right?
I mean, they said he had been bitten several times and actually even lost a finger, but he still kept it going. So
that wasn't a clue to stop.
No, because of the reference that I'm going to give you is basically it comes out of Mark chapter 16 verses 17 and 18, and it reads, quote, "And these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name shall they cast out devils, they shall speak with new tongues. They shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover." So he basically, was adamant in telling people that, if he ever went to get medical attention, then he would basically cease to have the congregation. He would just leave the church. So I guess this was just his way of just leaving everything to God, or just trusting in faith, that it led to his death. Unfortunately,
Spookism.
Right. And this happened last month. So for those of you who are Christians or believers in the Holy Bible, the Christian doctrine, it's very important, regardless of what people say, to use logic in everything that you do, especially in some of the practices that go on in your churches. Right. They have pictures, if you check it out on CNN.com, they have pictures of Coots' children, burning themselves with torches and fire on their arm, and a lot of really dynamic and blind faith sort of activity.
Right. That verse, I looked it up. That verse you were referring to is Deuteronomy 6:16. Where you're talking about you shall not put the Lord your God to test.
Thank you.
There we go.
Peace to that. on to our next warm and cold current event. We're going to pass it
indeed.
back over to the gods you killed.
So I've got one from current event, currentevent.com.
Oh, that's where you get it from. Oh,
I
he's got the secret spot. Okay.
Oh, man. It's going to get flooded now. But you guys need to use it as a password. Some secret stuff. This is actually from CNN.com. They both start with the C. And this is dealing with the Uganda president and his comment about homosexuals are disgusting. More importantly than his view on the matter, what I think was interesting that happened is there was another scientist who was part of the National Institute of Health. His name is Dean Hammer, Deanhamer. And if you do some research to this guy, who he is, you can see why he took the stance pro-homosexuality versus being against it. I think, upon other things, right, he's in a position to where he's using his science to verify a belief system that he wants to have based on his own personal life choices. Which, you want to be gay, lesbian, whatever, that's your thing. Right, but you shouldn't use that to influence other people to believe a certain, use your position to influence people to believe a certain way because they may not have access to the same knowledge. So you can spin the knowledge a certain way to make it look a certain way, right? I think the other thing that he does too is the president of Uganda had his scientists do research to see that they can verify if you could be born gay, which I think that's how science should work, right? You shouldn't make a claim and then work to prove your claim to be true, right? You should definitely play a neutral party, right? And see which is the right part. So I think, they actually display what true science really is, or being neutral and trying to look for the answer. Because if basically what's going on in Uganda, they're jailing people for life terms for being homosexual. And there's a lot of other things that go into that, but right, that's the main part of it. So I think it discredits Africa, which is already kind of looked at a certain way. Definitely in American eyes, when we say Western, European eyes, it's looked upon as a down way. So when you have people who do the research to actually come up with the science to prove something, then you have another guy who's an American scientist saying, "Oh, this is not correct," and he's saying that using his status as being part of the National Institute of Health, so it makes it look like his position is the official position, and this whole group of scientists or this whole institution within itself agrees upon his stance. Right? Yeah,
sounds like a really cruel institution of government. You know what I mean? Of course, we don't advocate any lifestyle outside of man and woman and child and the whole nature of family. However, it's just, if you want to talk about human rights issues, that would be one of them. The funny thing is, I was thinking, and I actually just wanted to look this up, whereas, the major religion in Uganda is Catholicism. And at the same time, you can justify jailing people for their sexual orientation, and they can justify it through science or government, whatever they choose. However, they're still aligned with the Vatican and the Catholic Church. So it's just a huge contradiction. And that's my take on it.
Yeah. I mean, my thing is, people are welcome to do what they want to do, behind closed doors, whatever, right? But I've always had the issue when it's being promoted and just about any venue you can think of. You know what I mean? Like, I'll get updates on my phone from ESPN, and majority of the time, the last couple of weeks have been updates in regards to homosexuals in sports.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So I don't tune in to ESPN to learn about somebody's
a gay sports player.
Whether
about sports.
Whether it's homosexual practices or what they do on their off time. I just want to know about the sport that they play, right? I don't care about their personal life.
Well, at least keep it dealing with equality. So you should mention Kobe Brown, the heterosexual player, scored 20-something points. You know what I mean? And it should have been outside the black heterosexual player. Yeah, let's just break it down. Exactly.
Yeah, like I said, my point is that what a person does in their home, do it in their home. Keep it private. Why does everything have to be so publicized? And why does a person's sexual activity matter in sport or anything that's not, anything that our children are exposed to? You know what I mean? Like that makes it, and I understand what they're doing. They're trying to soften up the youth. Maybe not our generation, maybe not the generation under us, but that next generation. They're really trying to soften them up to be open to that lifestyle as a way of life. So, I think it makes us as parents' job a little bit more difficult.
Right.
But it's crazy.
Interesting. Did you have another warm and cold current event?
Oh yeah, I got one. This one's pretty interesting, just for the stance that it's been so hush hush. But I could see why. The headline, and this comes from GuardianLV.com, and it's going to be very difficult for you to find any mainstream coverage of this. And once I build on it, you'll know why. But the headline is Icelanders overthrow government and rewrite constitution after banking fraud, and no word from U.S. media. Yeah.
After banking fraud.
Banking fraud, right? So I'll just read a little bit of it. Icelanders forced their entire government to resign after a banking fraud scandal, overthrowing the ruling party and creating a citizens group tasked with writing a new constitution that offered a solution to prevent corporate greed from destroying the country.
Wow.
The Constitution of Iceland was scrapped and is being rewritten by private citizens using a crowdsourcing technique via social media channels such as Facebook and Twitter. These events have been going on since 2008, yet there's been no word from the U.S. mainstream media about any of them. In fact, all of the events that unfolded were recorded by international journalists, overseas news bureaus, citizen journalists, and bloggers. This has created current accusations of an international cover-up of the story by mainstream U.S. news sources. So I think the name of this revolution, they call it the pot and pan revolution, because basically the citizens came out with no weapons, with pots and pans, and they were just banging them and making noise, and you know what I mean? But they came out, and this really ties into the we as it relates to the show that we're going to be dealing with today. Just a collective effort of saying, man, this isn't right. I'm not going to just get on Facebook and say, wow, this isn't right, and then, make a little post about it. I'm going to actually get out, and come as a collective and do something about it. So, I applaud the citizens of Iceland for taking a stance for what they felt was right. And,
for sure.
It's just, like I said, it's not a surprise that you didn't hear about it, but,
exactly.
For me, who try to keep their eye open to all the different things that are going on, for me to just kind of come up on it, like, and this has been going on since 2008, was like, wow, it's a shock. Right. So I wonder what other things are out there that we're not really into.
Right. I mean, censorship is definitely way more profound in these times, especially when it comes to any type of political movement or activity going on. I know that we more or less concern ourselves with, the day-to-day, building our family, making where we live a better place to live. But it's always good to hear something else going on out there, which, from what little we know, could be just and true. So I think that's a really important story among others that comes out on the Knowledge Yourself Radio.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that is it's not so much that they had to censor it, but they just didn't have to talk about it.
Right.
And so it's like the American people are just so used to whatever comes across that television screen as that being the news medium, right? And never looking outside of that for what actually is news.
And I think if you watch that scene in Boys in the Hood, where Ice Cube kind of talks about, Rick's death, and I'm gonna misquote it, but essentially he just said that either they don't care, don't show or don't know what goes on in the hood. And it's the same sort of idea. I mean, there are a lot of things that go on just within our neighborhoods that we don't hear about, and the mainstream media doesn't necessarily feel it's important. So peace to that, God. I want to pass it back over to Phil. Yeah, you had another one to hit him with?
I do. Actually, it's kind of it's a book I ordered. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's a book called Black God. Black God, and this is from Supreme Understanding. So basically, it's an awesome book. What I really wanted to say more than anything is that I bought this to help support my people. We should definitely try to support our people who are doing local, homegrown, good things. That being said, also you should also support businesses that care about the people. So I also received this book, The Black Rebellion, and his heritage playing cards. And he gave me these for free because of a discrepancy that happened due to ordering the first book. So I just want to say peace to Supreme Understanding and his whole crew.
Peace.
Over there. It's an awesome book so far, as all your books are, at least the ones that I've read. And just thank you for taking care of business and acting appropriately.
Indeed. Yeah, and it's good. In this culture, there are so many people that are doing some positive things. Just hundreds upon thousands of positive things, going on in this culture with our brothers and sisters. So, peace to SDP. So, is that? Did anyone else have something to add on?
I can't leave this out. So, NewYorkDailyNews.com has an article, and it's dealing with your boy LeBron James. And they made this dude switch from his black mask, which was a crappy movie, but I watched it anyway. Jet Li, did y'all see that?
Yeah.
You had to watch it, right? Anyway, they made a switch from the black mask to a clear plastic, basically a white mask. I think one of the things that are interesting about that is in the story, it goes down.
Insane, man. I mean, this is just insane.
It's completely insane. Honestly, and this is kind of relates to the topic that we're building on, is the we in that situation, meaning his teammate is Dwayne Wade and everyone else on his team, everyone else in the NBA should have all took a stand together and be like, look, man, you can't regulate this dude over wearing a black mask. You know what I mean? And I guess their argument to the NBA was they need to be able to see his face. But it's like, come on, the mask doesn't. It's not hiding the dude's face. You know who LeBron James is.
You need to see his face.
Right, yeah, his nose
Because
is
there might be
broken.
somebody impersonating LeBron James.
That's what it is.
You know what I mean?
Same build and stature and playing style.
Right.
Not really LeBron. But Dwayne Wade, his teammate, and I can only... the scenario in my head was, two slaves talking behind the trees, or whispering to each other. And Dwayne Wade tells the league actually that he warned LeBron James that the NBA was going to give him the dumb down on that mask. So you did a show talking about how NBA, NFL, those organizations are still linked to slavery. So you got to think the mindset of a person who is warning his person, hey, basically master's not going to like that, right? Instead of sticking up for him or doing something else more positive, he took with some slaves and singing some old spiritual Negroes as he's.
I mean, man, it just again, and you brought that up earlier before the show, and it just goes back to our show. Is sports modern day slavery? Which is what you brought out, and that's a really great example of how, I'm just kind of looking at the article on, what is this, the New York Times?
Yeah, New York Daily.
Or, excuse me, the LA Times for this one. They quoted him saying, he didn't really understand the reason behind the request, but he was going to abide by it anyway.
Right.
And this is just a stupid request, man. So
yeah, it's like, it's like one of those things where you think the league wouldn't be anything if it didn't have the players. So if something doesn't make sense, like, why not band together and say, like, what's up with the players organization?
Right.
Why not band together and say, this doesn't make sense? But then on the other end of the spectrum is like, you chose to work for them, so you got to live by their lives. You know what I mean? And I think that's the biggest issue. Like, you think about, like, say, the Negro Leagues, back in the day, the reason why they started the integration of Jackie Robinson and other different, so-called Negro players was because the Negro Leagues were so popular.
Mm-hmm.
And then people started to recognize that the best players were playing in the Negro League.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like one of those situations where I think players, you can look at it like us as people in this country. Like, we don't recognize our power. And I think that's something that's going to come off in the show. But if we recognize our power as a collective unit, then there's a lot more that we can accomplish as such. But
That's what happened in Iceland.
right. But when you think of things like individuals, like, wow, look what happened to LeBron James, as opposed to, well, what if I wanted to wear a black mask? Or, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, look what happened to him. That's when that separation comes into play. So,
yeah, it's not even look what happened to Miami Heat. You're right, God.
Yeah,
Look what happened to
LeBron
that single
James.
person.
Exactly. Right.
Well, I like to thank my brothers for the warm and cold current events. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to get into the show. Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace, Jarul Allah.
Peace, Jackal Knowledge of Law.
And we're going to get into today's show, The Eye That Killed the We. So we're going to begin with the definitions and just go into a really deep discussion about exactly the difference between the I and the we and how that relates to unity in all of us. So the first definition is I. It's defined as the 9th letter of the English alphabet, the number 1 in Roman numerals. I like to pass over number 2 to the God Jarul.
Number 2 is we. I and the rest of the group. That includes me, you and I, and another or others, and I and I another or others, not including you, use as a pronoun of the first person plural compare. Did y'all play a prank on me with that one?
I thought you was about to bust out to a flow. I was like, all right, dog, get it in. You know, whenever you feel it. I don't want to
Try to gang it up on me on a little prank or something.
All right, the next one is them. Used to refer to certain people, animals, or things as the object or a verb or preposition. Him or her, those.
Right, and you know, one of the things I think number 2 and number 3, I think that really is the way when we were talking about the show. That's where the disconnect is, just within those 2 words, the we and the them. So when Jerul, you read you and I and another or others. I and another, not including you. You know, and that's how we is defined. And then them, you know, sometimes we all get offended when they say you people or those people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a really separatist sort of terminology to refer to a group of people as those people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so this is going to be a really interesting and thought-provoking show, no doubt about it. Anyone had to add on? Want to add on to the?
Yeah, I wanted to add one more definition. I wanted to add hierarchy, which is a system or an organization in which people or groups are ranked one above the other to status or authority.
Wow. So, you know, I think we all, unfortunately, those of us who are working for corporate America, we see the hierarchy every single day. You know, need to listen to some Rage Against the Machine or something. So in this first section, it's titled, What is the I and Who is the We? So let's begin with the first question. What is the I? So would anyone like to take that pig skin and run with it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, the way I see I is, you know, like the way that I personally see it is I think I should be the collective. You know what I mean? It's dealing with completion. So the way that I see myself is how I should see others. And things that affect me affect others also, and vice versa. So, but I think in the society that we live in, I is dealing with more separation. And, you know, when most people, the majority of people, when they talk, you can just have a conversation with somebody and see how plagued our society is with the I mentality. Is that, you know, people generally tell you about everything that's going on with them and never really ask you what's going on with you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think that's an indication of where we are as far as the society goes. It's, you know, it's things like that on a small scale. You know?
I see that. No, I agree. I think a lot of times you look at people like, oh, I have the new iPhone. Right? So that puts
iPhone.
Right? Right? And that puts you in your own little group, you know what I mean? And definitely dealing with separatism. I think a lot of times, you're right, God, the I, and I like how you did that by running through the mathematics. The I should represent the whole and the collective. But even, I think if you look at it as I being singular, I think I, as an individual, need to be the best me or I that I can be so that I can add on to the we. Right? And I think you're right, God. A lot of times people have too much, since you're looking at the I too much as all, everything revolves around you versus how you fit into the piece of the puzzle. You know what I mean, if I was taken off this planet right now, everything would still go on without me. Right? So in the grand scheme of things, I am not so important. Right? But I am going to do my part to the best of my ability to fill in what I need to fill in to help the whole. And I think too many times people are looking at I as everything needs to help me, versus how can I attempt to help everything, because they don't see themselves in that thing.
Steve, told you this was going to be very thought provoking. So I'm just going to share a verse from the Holy Bible that we made. It's from Exodus chapter 3, verse 13 and 14. And it says, and this is in the King James Version, and Moses said unto God, Behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, The God of your fathers hath sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. So I think it all came out with what my brother said, because, they definitely spearheaded just the thought and the logic behind this show. If we just look at some simple words that we use every day, such as individual, there's the I, some may say there's in, but the whole point is we work so hard to be these center stage individuals. I don't like center stage, and they can testify. Like I'm still fighting them on sitting in the center. So just keep that in mind. Interrupt. A person that has a tendency to interrupt things tends to be classified as selfish. So I think the higher order of thinking, in terms of how it was just explained by my brother, the I, both of them, the I is supposed to be just your concept of I am included in this whole group of beings for this particular purpose, in the name of being righteous. And I think one of the things that comes out in this verse is that it's been used as a means to separate people. Because I think Talib Kweli said it best, where, the majority of the wars that have been fought on earth since, hundreds of thousands of years was in the name of religion, So with that being said, why don't we go into what is the we and how are hierarchies made on the earth? I wanted to pass it over to Jerul.
Well, I think, when you look at the Wii, not the Nintendo product, WE, I think it's dealing with things more as a group. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like one of those things when you're, I know for me, I come from a background of football. Like, I was a captain a lot of the time, but as a captain, one thing I learned was that you can't talk to the team from the stance of you need to do this or I did this. It has to be like we have to do this. You know what I mean? That's the only way you'll really motivate the collective. So realizing that everything is done as a group. You know what I mean? It's like, for example, you can take one cell out of your body and find all the necessary ingredients to make your whole body. You know what I mean? So it's like that completeness that you can find. It's like the macrocosm science. You know what I mean? So it's like the we is the macrocosm, whereas the I is the micro, but it's not separate from the we.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. And I think in the world today, that I has been separated.
Right.
And that's based specifically on how we see our identity, right? How we identify ourselves, with things. So, not to rant too much, but as far as how our hierarchies made on this earth, I think initially hierarchies weren't necessarily a bad thing. Like when we did the show on the yellow seeds, they would choose a king based specifically on him being, that majestic. It wasn't something where he just made himself king, but based on his ability and the things that he was doing to help the collective, they said, okay, well, he'd probably be the good person to have run things. The issue that I have is that in this society, it's like people are put in a place where they're not necessarily qualified to be in a certain position. They're just put there because of how much money they have or
who their family
is, and those types of things. So
right.
It's not based specifically on your deeds or your wisdom or things that you provide to make the we stronger, to make the we better.
Right, and that I'm glad you made that point, because what you just said, it reminds me of how nepotism begins, where you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 dictators ruling the country for how many years, and I think as far as hierarchies go, again, it's just when people begin to stray away from what it took to build great civilization, and that's the one thing about original people. We have so many monuments, over the course of so many hundreds of thousands and millions of years, that have proven that we were accustomed or are accustomed to working together to make something greater than ourselves. Because we've all on this panel, and everyone will articulate it differently, but we all understand that one day we will return to the essence. I had a student that told me the other day, he said, you're going to live 105 years. He was telling me that, and it kind of came out of nowhere, and I just looked at him like, yeah, okay. But
you know my lotto number.
You know what I'm saying? It made me just say to myself, well, that may not be the case. Therefore, I have to really think about how I'm going to work with other people, like my brothers here, to build something greater. To leave behind. Because, our names may be forgotten. YouTube may turn to Eagle Quest overnight. And then, I'm just making that up, but, and they say, we don't want these guys here, so, that's one way I think that hierarchies are made. How you see it, bro?
I think, to touch on the weed topic, I think a lot of times what the God was saying, although there is many different eyes in that we, right? Like you had the captain, obviously, and then you had the lieutenants or the other people who are following out the orders. But you can't come at it, you can't really speak from the here to here position. You got to speak person to person. And the only way that you can really do that is by saying we, right? As far as that relates to, and then I was going to say also the Japanese are really good at that, okay, right? In their culture, it's not that person messed up the engine, right? It's, okay, no, we all messed up the engine. Even the people who got it, he's like, I don't even touch the engine. What are you talking about? Because that's what happens over here in America. Oh man, that person did it. I don't even have nothing to do with that. Mine's just good. Mine's good. Right? You know what I mean? But instead, they look at it like, okay, yeah, my part is good, but the whole thing isn't good. So that means that we messed up collectively as a whole. I think the other side to we is kind of where you can get into the hierarchy, right? Because then you can, like the guy was saying, some people are pricked into power instead of being elected to power based on their ability, right? So then that becomes a we, right? We, the people who are in power, right? Not them, right? Those people, right? It's the we. And generally, that is I think that's kind of sponsored ultimately by I kind of mentality, right? Because even you find within groups where they're trying to separate themselves out from everyone else, within those groups there's still a battle for that I to remain as a supreme figure, right? And it's not often that they could come together and still work for a goal and still have that I as a leader, because they're all trying to be that I instead of just coming together to get the goal done.
And now that we're talking about we, it's just that everything in nature, because, what he said is profound. Everything in nature confirms the reality of the need for we and working together. So think about a pot of soup that you really like that you make from fresh vegetables. You've seen people make a whole pot of something, and then when it's all done, and we're talking about large pieces of vegetable or whatever it is you put in your soup, and the cook tastes it and says, there's something missing in this. So how is it that you can miss that one little spice in that big old pot of what used to be water, your stew and sauce and all that? How is it that your taste buds could miss that one little spice? It's because that, all those ingredients are put into one place, but yet they work together to create a certain sensation in your mouth. So I think it's really profound what you just brought up. I think what I really wanted us to get into, because you guys were prompting me prior to this show, is why is it that we don't see the similarities within each other, and we mainly focus on the differences, but also what caused the I to separate from the we? So what's the
Yeah, I think that's a deep one. I would say the way that society has been set up, and definitely even recently you can see it more, is you see the TV, not only the shows, but just how TV is set up within itself. That I, the individual, has a say in what this other person can or cannot do, right? Like Dancing with the Stars or something. You, as a person who may not be able to dance, has input on this person who's actually been practicing the dance and got in shape and memorized the routine, and blah 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 blah. Right? I think you also see it in the just the way that TV is going, and then in just the everything is designed. You have like the iPhone. That's personal for you. Right? You've got your tablet. My car is unique because it's this kind of car versus that kind of car. I live in this area versus living in that area, right? Which is the I or the we. That's why I said the we can sometimes be bad within itself too, right? Because they seclude and separate themselves from everyone else. The quote that says, "No man is an island amongst himself." Right, so you got to deal with the interconnectedness. So I would say the lifestyle, especially here in America, where I grew up, right, pushes upon you to want to detach and express yourself as an individual and shine amongst everyone else versus being shining with everyone.
Right, and you've heard that mentality. Just all of us have come up among our people where you meet people along the way and they say, yeah, but just watch, man. I ain't going to talk to anybody. I'm just going to kind of stay low key for a year or two and watch when I come back, man. I'm going to bust back on the scene and people are going to be like, yo, man, look, and they come back with that prodigal son sort of mentality. You know what I mean? Instead of working with someone that may be more of an expert than you. And I'm going to be the first to admit to you, I'm not really crazy about, some super wealthy people, but Russell Simmons, I remember him saying something in regards to his success. He said that, you should surround yourself with people smarter than you. And I thought that was a very humbling statement that he made, and I always like to say that I'm always surrounding myself with people smarter than me. This is a really good example. You see what I mean? So, how you see it, God? How do you see the separatist nature that kind of exists today or always has existed? And why do we tend to focus on each other's differences as opposed to our similarities?
Well, let's take a ride back in history.
Take them back.
About 6,000 years ago, right?
The X-Clan's pink Cadillac.
Yeah, let's take a ride back 6,000 years ago into the Caucasus Mountain region, right? You have a group of people, blonde hair, blue eyes, and white skin. coming down from the mountains, going to various different lands and seeing people who look the same. And more than likely, when they reach these lands, it's a shock. Like, whoa, you know what I mean? Who are these blonde hair, blue eyes? The people living in these areas probably never seen anything like that. So I think when that mentality becomes ingrained in your psyche, you know, you start to try to flip it around. So I think, you know, like a lot of what you see today is rooted in how the Caucasian man is treated, you know, when he first came down out of those mountains. You know what I mean? So that also coupled with him being a minority on the planet, for him to succeed, he has to, especially succeed from the stance of being in control of things, he has to keep us separate. And the only way to keep us separate is for us to see our subtle differences as opposed to our similarities, to see where our civilizations have crossed and how, you know, we actually are of the same people. You know, because you think about it, how could in this day and time we all think we're different when scientists have already stated millions of times that we all come from Africa, we all come from the same place, but we still think we're different.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Logic is failing. So.
yeah, exactly. So, you know, that's how I see it.
Right. I mean, that's a really poignant thought there. I mean, because I think one of the things that I noticed is just if you can tell a person that, you know what, I'm your brother, you know, and most people would be like, I'm not your brother. You know, I have students from maybe one student a year that'll say that to me, maybe 3. I'm not your brother. Nowadays, I'll just say, can you prove it? You know, and what I mean, and I explained it before to people. I said, you know, when I'm saying that I'm your brother, I'm saying this in terms of the fact that you're a man. You know what I mean? You're a human being. So if you want to take it deeper to genetics, it could be proven even further. But that's one of the ways that we kind of create this bond between us, especially in our culture. And those of you who may frequent any culture where there's some sense of brotherhood or sisterhood, you all understand that you have to acknowledge yourself as a free thinking human being, and that kind of is the tie that binds.
Yeah, brother. When you consider someone, you call someone brother,
it's offensive,
right? You know, it's
Who's saying it?
Right. It's really just seeing yourself in that person or showing equality. You know what I mean? Because two brothers are on equal plane. You know what I mean? So I think, you know, the word kind of gets used loosely, just like a lot of words. But if people really felt genuinely that when they call someone their brother, that they're their brother, then a lot of the nonsense that we deal with wouldn't exist.
Right.
Please,
Exactly.
please, want to add on that?
Now, I wanted to ask, so what do you think is the effect of a person who has separated himself or herself from the group? I mean, like, how does that person exist in society?
Well, you know, I think anytime you isolate yourself, you know, you leave room for devil to be created and manufactured. So I think about any people who are isolated from anything that's isolated generally starts to mutate into something else. You know what I mean? That's not necessarily in congruence with the collective. You know what I mean? So I think isolation is not necessarily a good thing. I mean, it can be, but I think for the majority, in relating to what we're building on, I don't think it's really a good thing. You know what I mean?
Right, and you know, I think just to answer that, the way the world is set up today, you're going to be ostracized already if you have any type of value system or views that don't fit into the status quo of the Western, specifically the Western mentality. But from what I could see, the Western mentality has stretched way
Way
beyond
past
the West.
huh?
And, some of us, we argue that, well, really, you can't say you're in the Western Hemisphere because if you're in this part of the world, you're still west of somewhere else. So you guys can figure it out now. But I think that since you're already ostracized, you're going to be ostracized in some way. You know what I mean? Just being in the Western Hemisphere or wherever you are. But then to isolate yourself, it winds up being, a very cold world. Knowledge, wisdom, and the actual facts, comes with a very cold place to be in. So I think a good example for me is just on a really cold day and my heater is not set in my classroom, the more students that are in there, the warmer it is. The fewer students that are in there, the colder it is. And you can take it to the Eskimos. They have a long history of kind of showing and proving that even though it may be a small group of them, they increase their survival rate by sticking together. So yeah, that's how I see that.
Yeah, across the board. Across the board, you think about like animals, and they work in groups. You know what I mean? You see birds flying in flocks. You see, wolves in packs. Ants. And then you look at, you don't see. Well, you may see it a little bit in wolves, like certain characteristics of the wolf might be, deemed as not as prominent, like it's, they have that what's the weak wolf called?
There's a name.
You have the alpha wolf, and then you have not to get into not Dave Corin, whatever the guy's name is. But what I'm just saying is that, like for example, with birds, you could find birds of different colors flying together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we're so smart, we're so more evolved than any other animal, but we can't even come together for one common cause. But you see birds do it. You see lions, tigers, all types of other different animals who may have different characteristics, subtle characteristics, but they do it. You know what I mean?
Well, I think now that you mention that, that's where the I mentality comes in, because it's that individual vulturistic spirit that kills off those beautiful animals that model that type of behavior. So, a man sometimes will sit somewhere by himself and he just broke up with his girlfriend and he'll look at two people. I've said this before on I think the Love Hell or Right Women show, but he'll look at a couple and be like, man, I hate them. They look so happy and in love, and I'm sitting here by myself.
Yeah, no, that's deep. And then depending on how deep you go into that feeling, depends on your actions about it, right? So you may be like, man, I hate them. If I can get her to look over here, I'm gonna flirt with her. See, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? If I can get, the girl may be saying that. If I can make, that man look at me, I'm gonna try to flirt with him and take him from that woman. Or like the God mentioned, people coming down from a cold place that's not really plentiful, running into people who pretty much got everything. You kind of start to hate a little bit. Like, the place that I come from doesn't look like this. I want that for me, right? And so, I can definitely see how that separation from yourself. And then, I also like what you mentioned, God, how you said you take something away, it'll mutate, and it doesn't necessarily mutate to something that's what everything else is doing. Right? The science has already proven that things evolve together. Right? So you can even look at a good example. If you look at the jungle, if you take out a certain animal or group, the whole species of animal that makes a certain sound, that jungle will actually try to something else will try to reproduce that sound, which is just a vibration or energy to kind of fulfill that spot, right? So everything does kind of evolve and work together. So if you were to take something out from that and then have it try to evolve without being connected to that, it's not going to know how to evolve properly, right? So then it mutates into something that's unnatural, right? It doesn't fit when you try to put it back into the collective. So I definitely think the person who isolates themselves is going to grow, if you can look at mutation and growth, right? But they're not going to grow in something that's going to fit along with what everything else is doing.
Might be a bacteria.
Yeah, think about those animals. Right, it's like those animals that they may be injured, when they're young, they take them to the zoo and give them
Right.
teach them how to or let them heal up, feed them things of that nature. But when they release them or they think about releasing them into their natural habitat, they can't survive, or
Right.
they're not equipped to survive because they've been isolated.
Right.
And yes, and that's the equivalent of how you vaccinate animals in captivity. You know, you introduce them to this unnatural lifestyle where someone's throwing food to them. Here's the steak,
Right.
and then like you said, when they get out into the real wilderness, some of them just don't
Where's
survive.
that dude throwing the steak at me?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and then you think about you go to a zoo, you can feel, and I think the more you're in tune with the we, you can feel the energy of these animals and tell that they're not really in a good
happy
yeah.
place.
Right.
You think about it if your whole mode of survival is to find food, wake up, find food, hunt, do all those types of things, and all that's been taken away, and you're just in a cage all day. Think of what kind of depression that these animals are living with. You know what I mean?
And if you can't relate to what the guy just said, think about your job.
Right.
Really good example.
Right.
Teach about the science of everything in life. This is just what we would consider surface level, but definitely some very thought-provoking ideas here today. I wanted to share this quote from chapter 7 of the Tao Te Ching. We just thought it would be really interesting to hit you where needed with just some other sources of philosophy that you can delve into. This is in the Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu, and excuse me if I don't have the closest to the original text. I had it, I loaned it to somebody many years ago, and I never got it back. So there you go.
Part of the we.
Not part of the we. So this is in chapter 7 of the Tao Te Ching. It says that heaven is everlasting and earth is enduring. The reason that they are everlasting is because they do not exist for themselves. Hence, they are long-lived. Thus, although the saint puts himself last, finds himself in the lead. Although he is not self-concerned, finds himself accomplished, it is because he is not focused on self-interest and hence can fulfill his true nature. Indeed. So, unless anyone had anything to say, you want to take it to break? Yeah, go ahead.
No, to build on that, it seems as if, when you get into isolating yourself or seeing yourself as the I, it seems like you're going against nature. If you just basically, the Christians might say, let go and let God.
Yeah.
But to take the spookism out of it, it's just simply letting go and letting, obviously you're a driving force, but letting go of that isolating principle and looking at things more of a collective. Like, for example, us to say something is east and west, to me, isn't really logical, because that would indicate that there's a central point where something started in the universe, right? But we, every day they find other galaxies and things of that nature. So I think just looking at things in its totality and recognize that you're a very small piece of it, but you're a major piece, and that you working together with the collective can make things, better. You know what I mean? Because it's all about evolution. Like you said, I think there's a difference between, for me, the way I see mutation and evolution. Evolution means the collective is evolving for a better purpose, to make life a little bit more easy for the collective and things of that nature, where mutation is just something that happens that is kind of like, not necessarily in congruence with the collective. You know what I mean? And it's
Something went wrong.
Yeah, more likely it'll affect the functionality of the collective.
Right.
You know what I mean? Kind of like cancer in the body or something like that.
Yeah, indeed. So on that note, we're going to come back with our second section of The Eye That Killed the We. Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge of Self radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace to rule Allah.
Peace. Jaquez Allah.
And we just hit you with the first segment of the show, and we talked extensively about, the I and the we, and how that's just, among other things, understanding, individuality as opposed to we, and the whole point of moving and doing things with a collective mentality. So this section is titled Them versus You versus Them.
Say that 3 times.
This is a hell of a section, brother. Yeah. Say that 3 times with peanut butter in your mouth. Them versus you versus them. So how do they play on the I? Why don't we begin with that basic question? First of all, let's define the them. How does everyone see who the them is in reference to us building on the idea of we? Who is them?
To me, them would be like 10% of the population, a group of people who recognize the science of the we, and they play on that, you know what I mean, to their own benefit. So, whether it's your government or your collective of rich individuals on the planet, like the media calls them the 1%, right? The individuals who recognize that the only way they'll remain in the position is to, be the sheep herder to the sheep, and usher them in the fashion or usher them in the way that they want them to be ushered, to their own benefit. So, yeah.
True indeed, and to all our brothers and sisters, add up them. Drew it up on mathematics if you caught that. So how you see them, God? Yeah, we know Jerome. It's like, just add it up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with my brother over here, man. I would say the 10% are definitely those people who understand what we is, know the power of the we, but strive to separate that. Because for whatever reason, maybe ultimately they can never be part of the we. Maybe they just don't fit in with the we. Who knows what the reason is?
Right.
Right. But I think that would be the thing.
Now, I do have to make it a little bit cornball for everybody, but when I was looking at this and we were building the show, when I saw them, I had to ask them, who is them? And then I just started reflecting on childhood. It shows you how TV traumatizes you, and I thought about the movie Them. That movie with those big ass ants that, just start tearing up the planet Earth. And the only way that the people actually survived in that movie, those that did survive, was just by sticking together. And that them, saying the 10% is actually a small group of people that build really large institutions that not only oppress people, but try to suck people into this us against them mentality, which was stated in the quote at the beginning of the show. So who the them is, in some respects, those might be the enemy of righteous people, depending on the degree by which they are fighting against righteous people. Yeah. And I mean, you all can draw it up yourself in terms of, are there varying degrees of unrighteousness? I mean, I would say yes. But it all depends on how we, deal with it. If someone lying about you, if it's a lie, it's a lie. And you're going to keep your life moving. So that's how I see that.
And I think on the flip side, it's coming from their perspective, the righteous would be the them. You know what I mean? And I think you spoke of institutions. I think that's important because a lot of the institutions are set up in a fashion where it's a us first them. So when you think about, for example, like the medical field, you like the doctors look at their patients as them.
Yeah.
And they almost look at them like peons in a sense. Like, not every doctor, don't get me wrong, but, there's a lot of doctors who put themselves up here.
Yeah, I'm a doctor. I know everything.
Right.
And
don't question
doctor. I've had that with doctors telling me about computer stuff. I'm like, all right, look, dude, with all due respect, you know just as much about computers as I know about your profession.
Right.
Well, obviously that's not true, but you know what I mean? It's like, okay, just because you have a certain degree in one thing, stick to that. It doesn't grant you status of all-knowing being.
Right.
So, but I was going to say, also, the 10% when you look at it, I would also say, and you kind of alluded to it, they're really a small group and not as strong and as powerful as they make themselves out look to be. You know what I mean? And you mentioned them, which had ants, but the actual movie, the Disney movie Ants, I think it was a Disney movie, right? There's a part where it was like the grasshoppers or something, where they're punking the ants and making them get food, right? And then the head grasshopper dude tells the other grasshopper guys, he goes, yo, it's not about the food. He goes, it's about us. I'm misquoting it, but basically he says it's about us having power over them. And if they ever realize how much more powerful they are than we are, then it's going to be over for us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I think that really encapsulates what the 10% is. The small group of people who don't really have power like that, but masquerade as if they have ultimate supreme power and control over things.
Come on, dragon.
Yeah, Or it's like the Wizard of Oz. So you just need that Toto to go pull the curtain back.
Right. Wow. So, with that being said, I think I wanted to share what we had. We were going to hit you with a few things that we think leads to the whole idea of the us versus them mentality. So you can always do a search on any site. This is some really interesting information, but it's titled Major Religions of the World Ranked by Number of Adherents. So I just wanted to share a list that we wanted to share in reference to how many people are actually affiliated with different religions. And of course, how statistics go. Drew always tells me, don't necessarily, look at statistics and take them on face value because numbers are different, they're skewed, más o menos, okay? So according to this, Christianity has 2.1 billion adherents or people involved in that religion. Islam has 1.5 billion people. Then your agnostics, thank you, brother. Mm-hmm. Your atheists, your secular, non-religious people, 1.1 billion. We don't fit into any of these numbers.
Right.
Hinduism, about 900 million. Buddhism, 376 million. They even have primal indigenous people, about 300 million. So, Scientology, I didn't see that, 500,000. Y'all coming up, huh?
Yeah, coming up.
The reason why we wanted to share this is because we just listed how many people are a part of all these different groups. And that's one of the things that not only creates a separation between people, but it creates a hierarchy. So if you were to go out and poll people and ask them, which religion do you think has the most influence? It would be interesting to see what people would say. And you can hit us up on the Facebook page. Which religion do you think has the biggest influence in 2014? And then I'll give you another question. Which religion do you think has had the greatest influence over the last 100 years?
Wow.
Good or bad? All right?
Wow.
So,
this is some serious question.
How does television fit into this whole idea of the us versus the them mentality?
There's this great, I think I posted it, but TED Talks, this lady did a talk on the last 50 years of television.
Mm-hmm.
And God, it was very interesting. The thing that I really walked away from, I watched it a couple of times, what I walked away with is people initially started watching television and wanted some kind of comfort. Right? So, you had shows that made you feel better. There was a certain time when that started to decline and shows in which allowed you, I guess, to kind of project on other people, right? Or point the finger and pick at other people started to hit a certain ride.
Mm.
And I think that's something that you can look at as it pertains to separating the I from the we, right? Or the them versus you, right? It's the way the TV shows started to go. So they started showing more shows where there was more you versus them, or them versus you kind of things going on. And it was very interesting how the graph played along with the decline of shows that kind of made you feel better versus shows that allowed you to decide other people's fate.
Right.
So I would say TV at that aspect had a great role in it because it kind of allowed people to point fingers at other people and be look at them, right? Versus the I.
I think our brother Saladin, he recently posted a build where he said, television is something that tells lies to our vision, and I think based on what you just said, one of the things that we can all say we lived in it, the idea of television pushing the Arab or the original man in what would be considered Muslim countries as being the arch nemesis, everything that stands for, freedom, justice, and equality.
Yeah.
So how do you see television tying into that, Brett?
Yeah, I was just thinking specifically about commercials. A lot of the commercials that I grew up on, from the Air Jordans that make you jump higher to
Reebok pumps.
the Reebok pumps, the various different things into today where you got, everything's about competition. Like you got a new tablet that comes out that if you get this tablet, that'll make you a cool person
In the group.
right? You know what I mean? And before, I think growing up it was kind of seemed a little bit more subtle, but now it's just like blatant. Like it's almost like you need this to be accepted. You know what I mean? But it's ironic because it's like people are looking for acceptance, which deals with the we, but they are looking at it through attaining things that other people don't have. Right. You know what I mean? Like I have these shoes, so this will make me cool because no one else has these shoes. So when I go around people, they're gonna all compliment me and accept me, but I'm cooler than them because I have these shoes. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think that's because I know the guy Jaquil, he has a teenager, and I hear him talking to him when they're together. I think when you're an adult, what you just said, it shouldn't even play a role in your life, like what people think about you. That is, unless you don't bathe and you go to work, or some basic hygiene. Other than that, when most people get up and they're adults and they go to work, they don't necessarily dress to impress other people. And that's something that's common in our culture. Dress to impress. It's like, okay, so what does that mean? Because if my concept of dressing to impress is wearing some blue jeans and some Jesus sandals, then, shouldn't I still be accepted?
Right, exactly.
Television.
Yeah, no, it's real. And it's like the guy was saying, I think in our youth, it was either a lot more subtle or, it's not really pushed as much. But, nowadays, I was trying to think of the name of this cartoon or like Disney show the kids was watching. But you can definitely see how it shows the different kind of class of people, per se, right? So you've got like the one girl who's really pretty and bubbly, and she's in that group of people, right? The really cool, trendy people.
Right.
And so then I kind of put that in perspective with actual life, right? You got the people who, not the front of Starbucks, but, the people who are at Starbucks every day, like, okay, if you drink the Starbucks coffee, then you can't really be drinking coffee.
Right.
You can only drink Starbucks coffee. That's the coffee to drink. Right? And you know what I'm saying? You can only drive this kind of car, right? Because that's what all the cool people are driving. And And that's what that is. And you can only dress like this because this is how all the men are dressing now. And da, da, da. So I would say in that aspect, TV definitely pushes the whole them versus you by making you try to join with them. But like the guy is saying, all the things that you're pushing to get accepted by are also things that alienate you at the same time, right? So that's like catch-22.
Now, where does social media play that role? Because I mean, social media is not. I mean, I don't know if you want to consider it a close cousin or a relative of television, but it's just as damaging. I mean, how does everyone see social media creating this major separation that goes on?
It's interesting because there's a we, but it's almost like they're playing on the we. So, for example, someone will post a story about, I don't know, somebody, some actor who did something stupid, and then everybody, like hundreds of thousands of people, will make comments about that, almost like pointing the finger, like, look at this clown, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like everyone joining together to point the finger at someone else, and it's really an individual type of approach because you're doing it to make yourself feel better. You know what I mean? And everyone's doing it to make themselves feel better because maybe they're not so happy with what they got going on in their lives. But yeah, I think, you know, this is a deep show because it's making me think a lot deeper on the we and the I and things of that nature. So, yeah.
You know, one of the things, since we're mentioning social media, because, you know, they'll both tell you, you know, you're going to wait a long time before I respond on my Facebook page.
Yeah, I'm still waiting actually.
I mean, they tell me about stuff. They're just like, yo, did you see that post I sent you? And I'll be like, what post? They'll be like, man, I sent it to you a month ago. It's like, yeah, okay. It's just a time management type thing with me. I'll get to it, y'all. There's a front line. I should knock on wood. Huh? They call me a liar. There's a frontline, a frontline documentary or just frontline special. It's called Generation Like, and that report, or if you want to call it a documentary, it talks about the effect of social media on children, but more specifically, how much such as on Facebook, you know, how. What teenagers do in order to get the number of likes that they're getting, and how that is just the all in all in terms of their social status among their peer groups.
What was that called again?
Generation Like.
Okay.
Check it out on Frontline. I think it's frontline.org.
Is that where it had some like young white kid and he was talking about how he became famous because of his Instagram or something like that? Okay, I've seen pieces of that. Yeah, that's very interesting. I was going to mention that. So within that, they were talking about how, you know, obviously he became famous because the people who like him, but then the pressure that he felt of having to be able to post pictures all the time to get people to like the pics. My mind automatically went to, okay, well, kids like to do things that other kids are doing. Right? So this kid's got, you know, I don't know, 100 followers, but this kid's only got 10 followers.
Right.
Well, obviously you're not in the, you know, the core group. So it's like, okay, not only does it seem like life is dictated by social media and how so-called successful or famous you are on social media, but then that also extends into the real world. So the kid who's not cool in the real world, who also ends up not being cool in the social media world, really feels like a failure in life.
Wow, that's true. And, you know, I had a shocking revelation this past week because one of my students asked me if I was still doing the talk show. And I have never announced that I do this particular show to students in corporate white American institutions. I'm just putting it out there like that. That's exactly what it would be. So in any case, you know, I guess I try to keep, you know, my building in this capacity, just keep that out of speech within that institution. But he came up and asked me about it, and just as a collective, we do look at the views and we say, hey, this show got this number of views, and we use that more as a barometer in terms of how many people we are reaching, because this is duty. We're not doing this for any money, and we're certainly not doing it for fame. You know what I mean?
Although you like to pay us. I'll accept Bitcoin, PayPal.
He said Bitcoin. So with that, But that being said, it's just a matter of we don't see views and likes the same way that other people do. When we throw something up on Facebook or we see your comments, we're more or less just saying like, wow, okay, this is how many people are getting this very important message from 5%ers, and we're also representing a whole bunch of other people. The first time we slide and say something that's just people totally disagree with in our culture, we're going to hear about it, definitely. So you need to know that.
I wanted to add
Go
on.
ahead, guys.
It's when you think about the that mentality of the youth nowadays in regards to social media and the likes and things of that nature. When we came up, you had to actually not really make people like you, but you had to act a certain way for people to like you.
Yeah.
And it was seen through how they reacted to you.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now it's almost like you can really kind of quantify. Is that right?
It is now. That's right.
Yeah. The number of likes that you get. So like you can look on, YouTube or Facebook, and it doesn't necessarily show like you being a righteous person to get the likes. It's like you can get likes for anything. Like a girl can go up there and twerk and get likes, right? So it's almost like the things that you wouldn't normally do in a natural environment to get people to like you, you can do in that dreamland of social media and get likes and feel better about yourself.
Right.
That's dangerous,
Just by gyrating
Your
your backside tissue.
Right.
Snapping your friend, he comes around the corner.
Right.
I've seen likes for all kind of stupid things.
People getting punched out on World Star Hip Hop and all that nonsense.
Right. Really cruel things, man. Things that will create a Michael Myers.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. It really seems like these things or everything now is really driving the ego, right, of the person, and so you have a position in which people want to put themselves. Okay, so you already have people who are egotistical, like who already want to do things to make themselves look good, whether they're doing something good or something bad, right? It's still to feed their own ego, to make themselves feel a certain way. But then when you have things like social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, right, all things to where you have an audience of people, that kind of feeds that kind of a person, right? But that also develops a desire for someone to want to be that kind of person who may not have been that type of person, right? And then I think that's where you get the people doing all those kind of weird, outrageous things that they wouldn't normally do. It's because they're trying to be something other than their own selves. You know what I mean? And so since you're not the master of that thing other than your own self, right, you kind of flip and volley around and attempt to do things that you think that will get you those likes or that kind of mastery.
And actually, people tend to forget that the bigger your ego is, the more there's something more visible to people who like to coax people's egos, which means that, hey, he has a really huge ego. So that means I can get a lot out of him if I approach him in this way. That's where the ego is dangerous, So I think one of the things when we come back, we are going to talk about the you that is them. Does anyone want to add on anything before we move forward to our next break? No. All right. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about, what science has to say about the you that is them, which is our third section. Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge of Self radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace to rule Allah.
Peace. Jazakallah. And before we left, we talked quite extensively about the us versus them mentality and how that all plays out just in everyday life and, in our thinking, because a part of what we are sharing with you is just all of these ideas, they glue to our mentality and also it begins to control our being. So I always try to check my wisdom. I know all of us do. We check each other's wisdom. So as mentioned, the section 3, which is our last segment, is titled "The You That Is Them." One of the things we decided to do for this particular segment was just kind of open it up with an interesting quote. There is a documentary. Some of you may find it kind of entertaining because the host, he's a philosopher by the name of Brian Thomas. I think his last name is pronounced Swime or Swime. It's spelled Swimme. He's featured in a documentary called How the Universe Works. It's a really interesting, digestible discussion about the universe and its creation and everything else related to that. But you'll see how this ties into this next segment. It says that we humans have our origins in the birth of the universe 14 billion years ago. You guys can argue with that. And thus we are composed of the same energy and quota of that which composes everything in the universe. End quote. So how does science play into this idea of what we were building on the you that is them. So, what does science have to say about people's connection or our connection to one another?
I think when you look at the you that is them, it's almost like you're recognizing that there's no difference between you and them. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that moment of enlightenment to me. Like when you come to realize, you start to, for me personally, when I started, getting knowledge of self, I started studying the universe a little bit to understand that, there's really no difference in energies. It's just energy, and it's all interconnected. So if we're energy, and there's only one energy, then we are all interconnected. And realizing that to me is you seeing the you in the them, and realizing that there's no difference.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I would definitely say there's kind of like when you meet that friend and you're like, oh, yo, you're like the same person that I am, except you're you and I'm me. But we're like the same people, right? And that connection that you get, you know what I mean? I would say that's how you see the you and other people. And so oftentimes I think people get distracted by the few things that they have in different with other people. Right? Like, oh, you got an Xbox? Right? And then you're like, well, damn, what's wrong with my Xbox? Would you got a PlayStation? Right? But you miss the whole point. Both of you like playing video games. Right? So why don't you just take turns playing the same, the same console with each other instead of arguing about the difference in the game? You know what I mean? You got to see the you in the other person.
Right. And I think one of the things that came out when we all, because we've known each other, for a while, a few years.
10 days.
Right. It's been several miles since we've known each other. One of the things that we all have in common is the fact that the women in our life have similar backgrounds. Their family is from the same place. So that being said, here we all are together. So that whole idea of energy connecting and bringing things together is very relevant in this collective. And I would also include our other brother who was the brain behind putting this foundation together for the Knowledge of Self radio show. That was also his experience having a woman in his life who came from the same, or at least within the same proximity of the women in our life. So some people say, like, what are the chances of that? I don't know. You answer that question. What are the chances of that? So I think that as far as science, again, I said it earlier that there's so many different things that should be constant reminders to us that, when you're looking at one thing, it's made up of several molecules or atoms or cells, however you want to, draw it up. It depends on what you're talking about. Although you have, one book here, there are many different things that are put together so that this book can be whole the way it is. And it's kind of like the same thing, or at least it should be the same with our society.
No, for sure. You can even look at string theory and quantum mechanics, quantum loop theory that show different sciences about how people are connected, like the guy was saying. When you look at energy, it's not separate. Right? Just like the same thing when you look at the body, it's not separate. You break it down into sections so that you can understand it, but you got to put it together and see how it works as a whole. And so when you actually look at people are in those different aspects, you'll see that people definitely are interrelated. In the same way that what was the study that they did? You guys can look this up. The monkeys that learned sign language in a part of the world that wasn't in contact with the monkeys that were in the lab being taught sign language. Right? And so those monkeys learned it, and the word escaped me, but basically there's like a hive mind, kind of so to say, right? Of
Herd
animals,
mentality.
right?
Yeah.
And within that, you can see the connection. So not only are we connected physically, but also in the mind, right? But all that is just energy being expressed differently. That's what the God said. If we are energy, energy can't be created or destroyed. We've all got to be from that same source. So we're not as different from each other as we may like them to be.
True indeed. That's deep. So, is there such thing as a culture where the whole science behind we can be manifested, and what does that culture look like? Because again, we are 5%ers, and I mean, just like within many cultures, there still continues to be some separation, some division for a variety of reasons. You know what I mean? But when this culture, was first made known, I mean, I'm talking about within the 21st century. That's another story we'll build on. But it was a culture where there was an obvious body of people that were very much glued together. And sometimes people say it's because the number of people that were a part of this culture was a smaller group, even though they said it just kind of grew, boom, astronomically. So, like, how does it look in a culture where the collective and the we is present? How does that look?
I think honestly, not to be biased, I think the 5% to me has a true depiction of what, at least on paper, the we should look like. You know what I mean? Because it's really about developing yourself to the highest degree to help the collective. You know what I mean? It's not like there's one person that's in a space or a seat that's above anyone else.
Right.
Everybody has the ability to be a sun within their own universe. You know what I mean? Be the shining light and driving force of their universe, but recognize that there's no universe without you and I. You know what I mean? So that it's not just about you and your family, but the community, the world at large. You know what I mean?
Yeah, indeed. I would definitely agree that we definitely have the format in place to see what the we culture actually looks like. And I think a big part of that is how we deal with Allah, or how it's explained to me. You know what I mean? So Allah would be the best knower. And so if you are not the best knower of that particular cipher, right, person, place, or thing, you're going to fall back and let the best knower do what the best knower can do. You know what I mean? And then you just add on with what you can add on, right? And then there'll be a chance or there'll be a situation where you may be that best knower, but someone else is going to have to add on to what it is that you want to have done, right? It's the whole concept of the captain and the lieutenant. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're not going to always be the captain. Right? You might have to be the lieutenant, but then there'll be times where it's it's your turn to be the captain now because you're the one who can best lead in this situation. And I think that's one thing that I've seen in this nation that I haven't seen anywhere else. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's encouraged. It's not like, okay.
Not always the case, but it's definitely encouraged.
You know what I'm saying? It's encouraged.
Let's keep it funky.
Right. I chose my words, carefully. Yeah. So that's what I would say, guys. That would be one of the best examples that I've seen to where a we culture looks like.
Right, and I think I've always absorbed the most knowledge or a better learning experience by stepping back and watching, observing, listening.
Humility, that humility is important.
Yes, I learned. I tell young people this all the time. Like, I actually learn more from you, than I learn from most adults. Because they've only been on the planet, 15, 16, 17 years. where some adults have been on it for 35 and they're still fools. You know what I mean? So there's something I can learn from building with youth and sitting back and just kind of observing, you know, whatever it is they may be on that day. You know, and I learned quite a bit. So I want to address, you know, one question, which is, you know, how do we change our mentality? You know, from this individualistic mentality to more of a collective mentality. Is there a process out there that we can take ourselves through?
For me, it's simple, man. Knowledge of self. You know, reason being is that, you know, to piggyback off of what you were building about as it relates to law, you know, being the best knower. I think with knowledge of self, what it should do is it should show you where you may not, where your strengths and weaknesses lie, right? So not only that, but it should show you, or at least give you a foundation to approach developing those weaknesses into being more, you know, having more strength in those areas. But, you know, at the end of the day, there's going to be people who are better at certain jobs than you, and you just should be humble enough to say they're better than you.
Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Right.
Scottie Pippen obviously couldn't lead a team to those kind of championship situations, right? But he's an amazing player nonetheless, right? So he added on as a great number 2 guy.
Right. So that's the thing. I think, you know, with knowledge of self, it should allow you to be open now to seeing not only yourself, but seeing the collective. And seeing how you fit into the collective and how if you improve yourself day in and day out, you know, when you start sharing that information or sharing that knowledge and wisdom with others, you can see how that can affect them. You know what I mean? Especially those around you came from the same environment that you came from. Once they see the change in you, there should be a certain magnetic about you and about that way of life that should be attractive to them because they know where you came from. You came from the same place they came from, so you know they should come to you that way. So for me, it's knowledge. So
You know, I would have to second that. It's just that, you know, we've heard a lot of Father being quoted as saying, you know, if you want to see me, just come together. So whether it's 2 or 3 of us coming together or 4 of us coming together, it's always a really positive interaction that should take place. I mean, sometimes maybe it's rough around the edges, but for the most part, the whole mentality of just, you know, wanting to come together with your brother or your sister, which you share something in common with, or at least you're trying to explore what you have in common with that person, is always the first step in that direction. You know?
Indeed. I mean, you know, you gotta look. It says you gotta teach civilization of all the human family to the planet, right? And the key word of that is all and family. You know what I mean? And so if we're all family, right, then that's my brother and my sister. And why would I want to see my brother and sister hurt? You know what I mean? Or not in the best situation that they could possibly be in. Because my brother and my sister, like, we use that reference, and that means we have the same father and mother, right? And so that means that you are a part of me because we're brothers, right? So why would I want to see a part of me do that, right? So I mean, even if you want to be completely selfish, you could still look at another person and be like, okay, why would I want to see me do bad, right? Because that other person in some way exists. You exist in that other person. That other person exists within you. So why would you want to see yourself do bad? So you should want to help that person just based on that alone, and not wanting to see yourself do bad. You know what I mean? So I would think that's one way of we can change our mentality from the I to the we, is looking at how we're all one family, right? And you don't want to see your family member because your family represents who you are too. It's part of you. You always want to see yourself do that.
Rest in peace. I see that. I think one of the things that it would be good for us to also address was the idea of how does truth and belief play into this whole idea of the I and the we? I mean, what does truth have to do with developing a collective mentality where you're doing exactly what you said? You care for your brother, and you don't want to see your brother or sister hurt. So how does truth play into that? What truth do people need to know in order to begin developing this mentality of we?
Well, the quote you read in regards to the movie How the Universe Works, right? To me, it sums it up. You start to see within the truth of the matter is that we are all of the same energy. So, that being said, you can't differentiate. You know what I mean? And if you look at, like, the way I always try to approach things is take it back to the origin. And when you take it back to the origin, you'll have a clearer understanding of how it was, right? And how it ended up getting to the point of where it is today. So if you look at the origin as it relates to that quote, it's dealing specifically with just pure energy. We all are pure energy. So put all the BS aside. You know, your hair is this way, your eyes are that color, your skin's that color. No, you're pure energy. You know what I mean? And you know, you can't really can't differentiate when you look at it that way. You know what I mean? But truth versus belief. You think about, like, for example, Christianity teaches that you're special in an individual in God's eyes. So everything you do is basically your ticket to heaven or hell.
Right.
You know? So it has really nothing to do with anyone else. It's just you. So the decisions you make, don't make, those types of things are being tallied by some mystery God that if you do X as many, right versus wrong, and you repent, blah, 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 all of that nonsense, you're able to go to heaven. So that causes you to think only about yourself. How can I make it to heaven? You know what I mean? So you just live, believing that if you do this, that, and third, that you're going to end up there. Now, that may prompt you in a sense to try to be helpful to others, but it's not like you're doing it because you see yourself in them, but you're doing it because you're trying to reach
a goal for
exactly
yourself.
a goal for yourself. You know what I mean? And I think anytime you do, anything to try to gain something from it, that's just, coming from a selfish place. It's not really a good thing. You know what I mean?
I see that. So I think one of the things, and it'll always come out in every show, is that, when you see the truth, you're going to recognize it. And that's when you know that may be a group of people or a person you want to come together with. Because, what truth does is it creates more truth and more truthful people. So you could just take it to having an honest conversation with someone about any number of things, who you are, what your intentions are. And out of that conversation is going to come this process to where now two people are thinking about how important one of the other is to one another, if it's that type of conversation that takes place. But I think if you just walk around and you believe a particular person, take them on face value, as we say, have faith in their loyalty, as opposed to really getting down to the root or the truth of who they are, then you're going to have sort of this division be created between you and another person or people. Ask yourself a question like, why am I spending my time around this group of people? Especially if some of the things that are going on would be deemed as negative. And then when you're in a collective of positive people, ask yourself what you can do to make that group as productive as possible, but more importantly, to attract more people, so that you can accomplish more with that group of people.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, I agree. When you look at truth versus belief, the 5 percenters will say the truth is in the square, right? And the square is something you can stand on or do work on in. You know what I mean? Whereas belief is the same thing as walking on clouds. You know what I mean? You see it there, it looks like it may have some substance to it, but when you go to step on it, you just fall through. You know, I would say if people deal with truth, you'll find those people who are really about the I. As the God said, the I really should represent the whole and not the singular, right? Because I is dealing with completeness. Yeah, so that's how I see it. You know, is that the truth is something you stand on. So if you can, if me and you can stand on it together, right? Then there's the I or the we. You know, what I'm saying right there together. If we both can't stand on it, then obviously there's something wrong. There's some kind of miscommunication.
Yeah, you think with truth is work. Belief is really no work. You know, and obviously we know that the way that this universe works, you know, you're not gonna really attain anything without work. You know, so from the smallest ant who works all day to, you know, make sure that his crib's cool, and, you know, the collective of other ants are all in a good place, to the flock of birds who's constantly flying around trying to find something to eat. It's work. So it's no different with us. You know, so when you deal with truth, there's work there. You have to actually, you know, research. You have to keep you have to use all your senses, you know, to make sure that you're taking in information to be processed into knowledge the proper way. Whereas belief, you know, it's just one of those things like, oh, okay, that's what it is now. You know, there's no work. There's no work.
So believe today, as the truth won't be a truth later on.
We gotta get like a gift or a soundbite back on it. That was dope. Now, you know, to add on though, I would say work is a real serious part of it. Like the God was saying, you know, the ants work together, the birds are flying, they just work, you know, together, the building the nest together. You know, lions or lioness when they hunt, they do it together. Right? So all these different things you can see in nature are doing things together, right? And when you do things together, that creates a certain bond, right? Man, we should get some plugs for this Disney movie. Remember the Titans, right? I think it's a good example of that because within that you see that they all went off to that camp and they all had to put in work together. And when they came back, they were one solid unit. You know what I mean? Versus you know, separate and I'm gonna let that dude get hurt because whatever. They were like, nah, that's my man right there. Right. Like that's my brother. That's me.
That's a great example because you know it's obviously what was hindering them from working together was the subtle differences. Right. But once they started seeing each other as themselves, that's when they started really to progress as a unit.
Exactly.
That's really to me that's the foundation of the show.
Right.
True indeed. Well, I think now's a good time for us to get into the read, the view, and the do. What do y'all think? All right. So I would like to give the read over to Jaquil. I added on a couple of texts.
Oh, you added on. Okay. Yeah. So first off, you have you guys check out The Science of Self. Right, that's a great book. I think it deals with the topic that we just built on beautifully, fractals and things like that. Right, and how all that relates to the I. Then we also have Black God. So far, it's a great book, but it actually reads more like a reference. So you may not want to read it all the way through as much as you would just want to pick a certain thing that you want to look at and read that and research up on it. And then we've got the Black Rebellion. This right here, so far, is a killer, and I think it's a great thing on the we too are working together. Right? You talk about how slavery and how divided they were in slavery, but you still have different groups. You know, not only just so-called black slaves coming together, but black and Indians coming together, I mean, to fight for a common cause. So
Even blacks and Caucasians to some extent.
even blacks
right?
and Caucasians coming together to fight for the same cause. You know what I mean? It's like, remember the Titans.
Right. Sounds good. To view, check out How the Universe Works and Journey of the Universe.
Participate in the Human Genome Project or Ancestry DNA. But like I said, kind of obviously use your own knowledge and wisdom to determine if it works for you, because there's been obviously a lot of conflicting things in regards to that ancestry DNA. But yeah, just like I said, for me the biggest thing is just start opening your eyes a little bit and thinking a little bit deeper about things. Like, you think if it was, what does it say, 14 billion years since the so-called Big Bang, right?
Right.
So 14 billion years of evolution, it's not going to be very simple,
To figure
to
things
figure
out.
things out. There's going to be a little bit of complexity to it, so
You can't Google it.
it's not going to happen overnight, but just remember that everything that you study should be, useful information, not only for you, but passed down to your children and then passed down to their children, so on and so forth. So, that's my last words.
So, as always, it's always beautiful to come together with my brothers and, have an opportunity to talk to you and you talk to us, hopefully, in return. I wanted to give the last word to Brother Shaquille Knowledge. Allah.
Indeed. Knowledge of Self Radio. You, I, or we don't have to go to college to do knowledge.
Yeah. Peace.
Peace.